Hi everyone, I'm Callie Kim. It's June, the summer is really heating up now, and the way that I water my container garden makes a difference between dead plants and plants that are producing a ton of veggies. So today I'm going to share with you my expert tips for watering my container garden. You too can do this, and by applying these tips, you can beat the summer heat and be harvesting a lot of vegetables. First is, if at all possible, automate your watering with drip irrigation. Now, a lot of people are really intimidated with drip irrigation, but it's really very simple to install. So drip irrigation is simply little hoses that you install around your containers that have built-in drip emitters. And what this does is it gets the water right to the roots of your plants where it needs it the most, but the most important thing is it takes the guesswork out of watering. We get busy, we forget to water, we don't have time to water, and this way our plants get the consistent watering they need even in the summer heat. Now I want to take you down below and show you how our drip irrigation system is set up. If you take the time to set up a container system, it's well worth it. It's going to free up your time, your garden is going to be so much more productive, and you'll be very, very glad that you did. And you need to set up a whole separate system for your containers because they have different watering needs. So let me just give you an overview of my drip system right here. I've got two separate systems. This big one here with 3 different stations is for the main portion of my garden, my raised beds. And this one here with the timer attached to it, they both have timers, is for my container system. And what allows me to do this is this Y splitter here coming off the main water line and hose bib right up here. So that way, this one can be for my main garden, this one can be for my containers, with 2 different timers on 2 different schedules, which allows me to automate watering my containers and my main garden. So I've got my heavy duty hose, my Y splitter, my pressure regulator, which just regulates the pressure so it doesn't blow out your system. Then I have my timer and a 1/2 inch supply line, which takes the water to my containers. The 1/2 inch main supply water line comes off my timer, and then off that main supply water line are smaller 1/4 inch supply lines that run up to my containers on my deck. The 1/4 inch water supply line then runs to my containers and is attached to a 1/4 inch line with drip emitters built in that are spaced every 6 inches. That line encircles around the inside of my containers and is secured with landscape staples, and that's how the water gets to my containers. Now you might be wondering, what are these 2 different connectors on my timer? That's so you can have containers in different parts of your garden. It's really amazing, it makes watering so much easier. So you might have containers on your deck, you might have containers down the lower part of your garden, and this way you can water each on a different schedule. I get questions about my drip irrigation setup a lot, so you're not alone, and that's why I'm making this video. All the instructions on how to set up drip are in my book on organic gardening for everyone, and there's also a really handy drip irrigation kit available. I'll link to everything down below. Next tip is watering your containers consistently on a schedule. Now the beauty of a timer is not only does it allow you to have different zones, but allows you to automate your watering on a schedule. I don't have to remember to water my garden. I absolutely love that. There's no way I could water this entire garden by hand. But a timer allows me to set it for whenever I want to water and forget about it. I can go on vacation, I can do other things in the garden I would rather do besides watering. It takes care of the watering for me. So my plants get the consistent water they need, they don't dry out in the summer heat, and I get to harvest a lot more vegetables that way. So if at all possible, install your drip system. It will really help with consistency and watering your containers, which is a very, very important thing to help your containers be productive. If you can't install drip, you can still water your containers. But let me just explain why consistency is so important. If your containers dry out, it stunts your plants, they can die, or worse yet, the soil can become hydrophobic, which means that it's so dry that the water just runs right out instead of absorbing into the container. So let me show you what a really easy way to water your containers if you don't have drip, and will definitely help you be consistent and prevent your soil from becoming hydrophobic. What I do for my smaller containers, like 5 gallons or 1 gallons that aren't hooked up to drip irrigation, is I just place them in a little storage tub here and then fill the storage tub up with water and then let them sit in here for 15 or 20 minutes until the water has wicked up through the bottom and absorbed into the container soil. After your container is saturated, just remove it from the storage bin And the great thing about this is it really cuts down on how often you need to water your containers because the soil is fully saturated. And the more practice you get at watering your containers, you'll be able to tell the weight of a container that's completely dried out, it's very, very light, and a container that's well watered and saturated with soil, it's a lot heavier. Another way you can fix hydrophobic soil if you don't have a storage bin is by putting your nozzle on just a little tiny drip, putting it in the middle of your container here, and letting the moisture absorb slowly into the soil. Let it run for 30 minutes to an hour, and then pick up your container, see if it's heavy and moist with water. If not, let it run another 30 minutes to an hour again. And you may even want to move it around to different spots in your container to help this water absorb into different parts of the soil. My favorite time of the day in the garden is in the morning. It's nice and cool, quiet and peaceful. It's a great way to start the day, and it's also the best time of the day to water your containers. Watering your containers in the morning allows them to absorb the water before the summer heat of the day sets in. So it minimizes water evaporation. When you water in the morning, you're giving your plants what they need to make it through the stress of the day, and it plumps up the plant tissues with water so they're able to deal with temperature swings or whatever environmental stresses might come their way and still keep on being productive and pumping out the vegetables for you. When you water in the morning, you'll see a lot less stress on your plants like wilting during the heat of the day. That being said, if you do see your plants stressed out and wilting in the middle of the day, definitely go outside and water them. But if you can, avoid watering at night just because it causes the leaves to get wet and stay wet, which can cause a lot of fungal diseases and other issues to your plants. My timer on my container drip irrigation system is set to go off at 5:30 a.m. for about 10 minutes every other day in cool or wet weather, and every day for about 15 minutes during hot weather. But definitely set it to go off in the morning to maximize the watering benefits to your containers. One of the questions I get asked the most is, how do I know when to water my plants? And my answer to that is, it's different for everyone. But what you want to do that's consistent is to always check your soil moisture, which is different for young plants over here as opposed to more established plants. And that's what's going to tell you when to water. So come on over here to my small little summer salad station and I'll show you what I mean. These plants are just popping up. They have very, very shallow roots. And I definitely don't want to overwater, which would cause root rot and cause these plants just to keel over from overwatering. So what I'm going to do is stick my finger into the soil up to my second knuckle. So it's about an inch or two down. And if it feels wet, which it does right now, I don't need to water. You can even pull up just a little bit of soil if you want to. You can see how this soil is a nice dark brown color. It's nice and moist and doesn't need watering. So I'm not going to water this container right now, but I am going to go over here and check my Tiny Tim tomato, which is a much more established plant. Now you can do the finger test here in this 5-gallon, but it's a little bit harder to do because these roots are far down into the bottom of your container and I can't reach down that far. So what I like to use in this case is a moisture meter. It's super handy. It's got a little calibration on the top here, but you can, or a little meter here on the top, you can actually calibrate to the ideal moisture that you want for the type of soil that you're growing in. And then a nice long little spike here that you can put into your container. So you can see how moist it is down deep into the container. And you want it to be about in the middle of this moisture meter. So you can see here my little 5-gallon container is just about right for the moisture level. And you definitely don't want to water containers that don't need watering because again, they're going to get too far saturated, cause root rot and all kinds of fungal diseases. So overwatering can be just as detrimental to your plants as underwatering. The Smart Pot with cucumbers in it is kind of at the end of my drip irrigation system, so often it dries out a lot quicker. So let's check it with the moisture meter and see if it might need a little bit of extra spot watering. Pop it down in here. And you can tell it's not quite in the middle, it's more on the low end, which means this container is dry and definitely needs a little bit of extra water to make it through a hot summer day. Next tip is water your containers at the base of the plant. Now this is just a general overall good practice to get into. It helps avoid soil splashing up onto the leaves of your plants. The soil can have a lot of pathogens in it. And when you're watering from up ahead like this, not only is it a really inefficient way to water, I mean, look at how much water I'm wasting here, but it can cause the soil to splash up on the leaves of your plants, which can cause disease. And plus, the plants need the water at the roots. That's where it's going to use it the most. and really help it the most on a hot summer day. So get a nice deep drenching. And the next tip goes right along with this is you want to water your container plants deeply until the water runs out the bottom. Now, a little helpful tip with this is over on my watermelon plant here, I've got a drip tray underneath. So I'm going to water my plant at the base. And then especially on a deck or a patio, the drip tray can be super helpful, can catch the extra water and allow the plant to continue to soak up the water into the roots so your container is nice and saturated. So you're going to learn by trial and error just the right amount to water your plants where it runs out the bottom and it's not overflowing with water, but the container can soak up the excess and get really good use out of it. Now my containers that are hooked up to my drip irrigation system, I don't use plant saucers with those because the drip is running and then the saucer would fill up. I have to empty them every day or risk overwatering my containers and having stress issues and detrimental issues to my plants. Now a little side note here on these containers on the wall, because I do get a lot of questions about this. Where are all your drip irrigation hoses? Well, as I explained earlier, I have one supply line that feeds up to my main deck for my containers, another supply line for my container system that's hidden behind these stone walls and runs into the containers that are down here down below. So that's where the 2 zones is very, very helpful on that timer. Next tip is mulching. Now mulching is critical when it comes to the moisture level in your containers because containers can dry out so quickly in the summer sun. What mulching does is it really locks the moisture into your plants, reduces water evaporation, and means that you're going to have to water your plants much less often. So here, let me show you what I mean. I'm going to peel back the layer of shredded straw mulch and look how moist that soil is underneath there. If you didn't have mulch, this top level of soil would dry out the roots of these bean plants, which are very shallow, would stress the plant out, and it just wouldn't do well in the summer heat. So there's lots of different things you can use for mulch. One of my favorites is shredded straw. There'll be a link for this in the video description. You can also use shredded leaves, which you can gather your leaves in the fall, collect them when the leaves fall from your trees, or collect them from your neighbors or even local parks if you don't have leaves in your yard, and save them and then use them as a free source of mulch in your garden all summer. It also breaks down over time, adds organic matter to your soil, and brings in the worms like crazy. The last tip is adjust your container watering frequency according to the weather. So keep an eye on that weather forecast. When it's hot and dry, your containers will need watered a lot more often, sometimes even twice a day, especially your smaller containers like your 1 gallons or your hanging baskets. And you might need to adjust the frequency of your drip irrigation. On the other hand, when you're getting a lot of rain, you may need to put your drip irrigation on rain delay or not water your plants during those rainy days. But it's super important that you're always checking, either with using your finger as a moisture meter on shallow rooted plants or using your moisture meter so you can check the roots of your deeper containers. If you follow the tips I've shared with you today, it's going to save you a ton of time and you're going to see increased productivity in your container garden. Thanks for watching. See you next time in the garden.